Hello and welcome to Veterans Voices. I'm Ken Wayne, KRON 4 anchor and Navy veteran. In this program, we're going to focus on the lives of 24 Northern California veterans who finally got the recognition they never received during one of our nation's darkest periods, the turmoil surrounding the Vietnam War. They were invited to go to Washington, D.C. It turned into a trip that changed their lives. It's hard to believe this group of senior citizens was once part of a young generation that was changing the world. In the 1960s and early 70s, San Francisco and the Bay Area was the epicenter of a cultural revolution. Haight-Ashbury, hippies, civil unrest, peace, love, and drugs, and Vietnam.
What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. The next stop is Vietnam. And it's 5, 6, 7. Open up the early gates. Well, there ain't no time to wonder why. We're all gonna die.
It was, without a doubt, the most unpopular and divisive military conflict in modern American history. In many ways, these men found themselves in more than one set of crosshairs.
And the guy, when he gave us our uniform, he told us, don't wear it when you go home. Because they didn't like us.
On this day at SFO, these vets are going on an honor flight. It's a program to send veterans to the nation's capital to visit the monuments and museums dedicated to those who served and those who didn't make it back. For most of them, it will be their first time in Washington, D.C. I'm tasked with escorting Doug Wright of San Mateo, a Vietnam vet who was a Navy corpsman attached to Marine units in Vietnam in the combat zone, and Rule Skeeter Brown of Fremont, an Army civil engineer who also went to Vietnam. On the plane, it's not long before the military memories started flooding back.
I've never flown an airplane before. That was my first time to be in an airplane. I was 24 years old at the time. And we flew in one of those flying boxcars from World War II, I think, a C-119. Very noisy, a lot of vibration. But I tell people that, you know, the first time that I flew in an airplane, the first 5 times I flew in an airplane, I didn't land. Because I said, nice. They said, what? And I said, well, I just jumped out. And it worked out fine. So it was good. We did 5 jumps in the last week of training.
There's a sense of anticipation. These vets have already shifted back into their hurry-up-and-wait mode of being ready to move and follow orders, even though they have no clear idea of what's ahead. On landing at Reagan National Airport, a fire truck salute with a water salvo over the plane. But the real surprise was in the terminal. Complete strangers, smiling, grateful. The vets weren't quite sure what to make of it. This isn't what happened when they came home from Vietnam, so it's a little hard to process. It's an emotional start to what's going to be a life-changing visit. They have no idea. And there are more surprises to come. Our group of Northern California veterans are about to visit some of the most popular museums and memorials in Washington. Most are historical, but one is deeply personal. Day one starts with a trip to the U.S. Army Museum at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. It's new, opening during the pandemic in 2020. One of the vets I'm tasked with shepherding during this trip is Army veteran Skeeter Brown. He's looking for the unit he was assigned to in France and then Vietnam.
I was in Europe. That was the USAR command, I think they called it. And then in Vietnam, we didn't have a patch for that. I didn't have one on it. Maybe it looked like that one right there, actually.
Which one?
That one that says Vietnam on it. I think maybe that was our patch we had on our uniform.
Inside the modern facility, you can trace the history of the Army and some of its most famous soldiers, including Elvis. But one particular exhibit drew special interest, a film depicting combat in Vietnam.
I left that landing zone X-ray battlefield knowing that 80 young Americans had laid down their lives.
A group photo, and then it's off to the next stop, keeping to a tight military timetable.
Hello, darling. Good to see you. Welcome. You look at 95.
Another heartfelt and surprising welcome, this time at the World War II Memorial on the National Mall.
What do you get out of doing this?
Well, I get to say thank you to the many that help to protect freedom around the world. And it's a pleasure, it's an honor, especially for the young men and women that served in Vietnam. When they came home, no one said thank you, welcome home, or even a handshake. So the small gesture of coming and just saying thank you to some, to many, and even if it was just one person, we can never take these freedoms for granted.
Veterans from across the country, including members of another honor flight from the Midwest, were on hand. And from the Bay Area, a kid from Chinatown who enlisted during the closing days of World War II.
So why did you enlist?
Oh, I've ever seen what happened in World War II. I said, somebody got to bring the soldiers back home, and who's going to replace them? So I said, well, it's my duty, right, to go in and have them veterans come back home to see their family. So do my part in releasing them.
What do you think of people who were clapping when you came through?
Well, I think it's an honor that they appreciate his former soldiers and veterans coming back. We appreciate that welcome again, We did our job and they understand what we did. So that was the main thing, understand what we did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think seeing some of them be acknowledged when they haven't been acknowledged for so long, and some of these World War I or World War II vets, this is their first time here. So it's just
I know, but you got misty-eyed.
Oh, just wait till we go to changing of the guard. Yeah, no, it's just a gift to be here.
Some linger to watch a wedding photo shoot with a Marine and his bride. And then it's back on the bus. Next stop, the Washington Navy Yard for a picnic lunch and a tour of the incredible models inside the Navy Museum, located in an old naval gun factory just down the street from the Nationals ballpark. Battleships, submarines, aircraft carriers, planes, and more crammed into this vintage building. More tours ahead, the Korean War Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and the most profound, at least for many of these vets, more than 58,000 names on the wall. Doug Wright was side by side with Marines in Vietnam. There's a picture of him at Khe Sanh, and he knows how some of these names got here.
The military came and told his wife that, and she knew what was going on when they showed up, 3 officers. She knew that this guy went to Annapolis.
Mm.
And,
So we can get our picture taken.
really cool. Very cool.
First time you've seen the name on the wall?
Yeah.
Was anybody there greeting you when you came in? Oh, yeah? Oh.
Like this. I don't think you scanned it on the wall. I think.
We stopped nearby at the Vietnam Women's Memorial, dedicated to the 265,000 women who served in Vietnam, many of them nurses. Another important stop, the U.S. Marine Corps War Memorial, with the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. The day ends at the Air Force Memorial in Arlington, across from the Pentagon. It was time to rest and ponder a long day, looking up at the stainless steel spires arcing more than 200 feet into the sky. Coming up, our veterans are surprised by a military tradition with an emotional twist: mail call. One of the highlights for anyone serving in the military is mail call. Before the internet, most military men and women had to rely on letters to get the latest news from friends and family, especially when they were stationed in combat zones or other remote areas. This time, our Northern California vets got mail call in a Washington, D.C. hotel. No internet, no phones. It was letters from home that were a lifeline for soldiers and sailors, airmen and Marines far from family.
Amazing.
At this hotel next to Reagan National Airport, It was mail call again, decades after military service. The letters were from wives and children, friends and fellow vets. In many cases, words now on paper that were carefully avoided before to keep unwelcome memories at bay. But in this room, where vets understand, the words were a catharsis.
And call you a baby killer when you stepped off the airplane at SFO. You never expected that. And so today and yesterday, when we were going back and forth in the aircraft, there were people applauding, and it just marveled me. I was just marveled at that opportunity that people would stand up and say, thank you for what you did in the service. Because all we did was what we were told to do. All we did was do those things that our country asked us to do.
And the guy, when he gave us our uniform, he told us, don't wear it when you go home. Because they didn't like us. And you know, we lived with that for a lot of years. And I have to say that I think that we did something that couldn't have been done, because I think we made it better for the guys coming home now. You know, for us to, for them to know what we suffered through and what we went through. Now there's people there to meet them when they come home. Things that we didn't have. You know, I remember them telling me not to wear my uniform. I remember them, nobody at the airport, and I had to take a cab home. When I got on a plane, nobody sat by me from Fort Lewis to here. This past couple days, you know, going through this, I feel like, hey, you know, people have made up for that.
While I was in that VA hospital, I had some process groups and war groups and whatnot. We had groups every day. They didn't let us rest. And at that time, we had a war trauma group that this young lady that was in charge of it, man, she would get in our face and get what she wanted out of us. And she turned me around, and she sat with me, and we went back to Vietnam, and she gave me a wonderful ending to my trauma. She told me that I was trying to keep them alive inside of me, and I believed that. And now, when she took me there and we came back, I didn't have them anymore. They went to where they were supposed to go without me. And when I came out of that group, I'm feeling it now, I was able to forgive myself. That was the beginning of a new life.
I just have to say that this honor flight has really redeemed a lot of things in me. So I thank you all.
It is one of the most solemn places in America. Coming up, Northern California veterans participate in a special ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. Arlington National Cemetery holds the remains of almost 400,000 American service members and their spouses. Every day, wreaths are laid at the tomb of the unknown soldier. On this trip, the Honor Flight veterans from Northern California also laid a wreath. Here is that solemn ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony that you are about to witness is an Army reclaim ceremony to be conducted by Honor Flight Bay Area, California. Thank you. Order! On!
Coming up, the long flight back to San Francisco and one last surprise for these veterans. It was a whirlwind of museums, monuments, and ceremonies, and it was a bonding experience for the 24 Northern California men coming home a little bit changed from when they left. 6 hours in a plane isn't much fun. It's less fun when the flight is delayed. But the sense of satisfaction from this whirlwind journey to Washington made the trip a little easier to take. What the vets didn't know was what was waiting for them at SFO when they came through the jetway. Dozens of people waited through the flight delay to welcome the veterans home. It was the welcome they never got when they returned from Vietnam. After the shock of that first welcome in D.C., this one was easier to accept. After years of facing shame and even guilt for serving in a war that many Americans turned against, it was a chance to let go of some demons and accept the fact that they did what they thought was expected of them, to serve when called upon. Getting recognition for that, at long last, still meant something.
Hey, welcome back. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
Surprise keeps coming.
Many veterans don't really know how to react when someone says, "Thank you for your service." After this honor flight, I can tell you that many, if not all of these veterans have a new appreciation of those simple words, even if they still don't know what to say in response. If you know a veteran who would be interested in going on an honor flight to Washington, or if you'd like to volunteer to escort a veteran, visit honorflightbayarea.org. Before we go tonight, one last special moment, a surprise performance by the U.S. Marine Corps Silent Drill Platoon, including one member who's from the Bay Area. One last surprise in Washington for our Northern California Honor Flight veterans. Enjoy